Do you live in an apartment and are a little bit jealous of those who can decorate outside their home for the holidays? Well, I'm here to tell you that you don't have to miss out. This project consisted of several smaller projects to bring my vision to light. I found this 4-foot unlit artificial Christmas tree at the Dollar Tree. Next, I used some snow spray to make it look frosty, then allowed it to fully dry. I started by creating a wooden Christmas sign on the back of my fall porch leaner. I created and cut out letter stencils onto vinyl using my Cricut, then applied them to an already stained 12-inch wide by 4-foot long board. Once the 2 coats of acrylic paint were dry, I took the sign outside and created paint splatters over the entire board using more white acrylic paint. My goal was to make this board look aged, like it had been sitting in a workshop for a while before becoming a sign. Lastly, I took some low grit sandpaper to make the letters look aged as well. The next project was to create a large wreath. I found this wreath at the thrift store for under $5. I removed some old wire and ribbon, then laid some pine cones all the way around the wreath. To attach them, I cut a piece of floral wire, wrapped it around the pine cone, twisted the wire, then wrapped the wire around the wreath. Next, I took the wreath outside and used some snow spray to tone down the green and give it a frosted look. Once the snow spray was dry, I attached some small ornaments that I found at the Dollar Tree with floral wire. The final project was to add some garland around my front door. I started by adding some small nails to the trim around my door, but removable hooks could also be used. Then I secured a zip tie in the middle of my 9-foot thrifted garland, threaded a loop of floral wire through the zip tie, and pulled the zip tie tight. I repeated this to the left and right of the center to line up with the corner nails. I hung the garland to the top of the door frame, then secured the sides again with small nails and floral wire. Lastly, it was time to put everything together. I placed the Christmas tree on the left side of the door, then added 3 strands of battery-operated string lights I found at the Dollar Tree to the tree and topped it with a bow I made from wired ribbon. I wrapped the same wired ribbon around the garland as well. Then I hung the wreath on the door, and then on the right side of the door I placed my porch leaner sign, followed by a wooden crate wrapped in ribbon. Then I placed some sticks into the crate along with a painted wooden tree I also found at the Dollar Tree. The final touches were a metal lantern and battery-operated candle from the Dollar Tree, as well as a buffalo check rug. I love how my rustic Christmas apartment door makeover turned out, and I hope that this inspires you to make over your own apartment door this holiday season. For this festive project, I first headed to Walmart and found this medium-sized plastic planter that resembled a barrel. Starting with the plastic planter, I first began taping off the 3 rings around the barrel with painter's tape. I made sure to cover each ring entirely before moving on to paint. Next, I painted the planter with 2 coats of an off-white paint and primer combo and let it dry fully. I removed the tape once it was dry and painted the rings with gold rub and buff, then finished it off with a clear semi-gloss sealer. Once the plastic planter was fully dried, I flipped it upside down and hot glued 4 black round buttons to the top ring equal distance apart. Then I hot glued 4 more black buttons to the bottom rim in between the 2 buttons above it. Next, I took a roll of this wired jute cord I got at Dollar Tree and began hot gluing it to the planter. Last up for this plastic planter, I flipped it over, placed it on a flat surface, and drilled several large holes into the center bottom to create a larger hole that will come in handy later. I then focused my attention on the wooden barrel planter. First, I loosened the screws that held the metal in place. I took some Dollar Tree wired ribbon, removed it from the spool, and folded it in half. Then I began feeding the ribbon up through the bottom ring, up and over the top ring, then back down under the bottom ring. I found it helpful to pull the ribbon all the way through, then hot glue the end to the bottom before continuing to weave the ribbon through. I took my time and adjusted the screws as needed. Now it was time to decorate. First, I removed all my Halloween decor, then laid out my Christmas outdoor rug, placed the wooden planter on the right side of my door and the plastic on the left side of my door, both upside down. For the plastic planter, I took a 4-foot faux Christmas tree I got at the Dollar Tree, fluffed it out, then placed it inside the hole of the planter. Now I have cute planters turned Christmas drums that make my front door extra festive this holiday season. For this fun holiday project, I headed to Walmart and picked up a blank outdoor rug for around $7. First, I used a cereal bowl, placed it in each corner of the rug, and traced a semicircle with a chalk marker. Then, on the shorter ends, I used a ruler to measure in 1 inch and drew a straight line connecting the two semicircles, and then repeated it for the other side. Next, I lined the lid of a large casserole dish to the 1 inch mark and traced the curve from the handle to the side. Next, I placed a cutting mat under the rug and used a box cutter to cut out the design. Then I used scissors to trim away any excess to make the edges look sharp and clean. Once the rug was cut and ready, I flipped it over and used a ruler and paint marker to measure 1 inch in from all of the sides and traced the shape of the rug to make a border. I used some painter's tape to tape inside the border, then headed outside and spray painted the border in a dark red color, making sure to really saturate the color. Once the paint was dry, I removed the tape, then used more painter's tape to tape the painted border. I then used a beige spray paint to paint the large inner portion and then allowed it to fully dry. Next, I used my Cricut cutting machine to cut out various stencils in the shapes of stars, a gingerbread, a Santa, Christmas tree, and a mitten. If you don't have a Cricut or a cutting machine, you can print out these shapes on cardstock and cut them out with an X-Acto knife. Next, I laid the stencils onto the rug and arranged them to make sure that I liked the order and placement, then began working on the first stencil, which was the Santa Claus. I added a white palm to the top of his hat, filled in his beard and the rest of his hat, added a big red nose followed by some eyes and a mouth. I made sure to really saturate every section to make sure that the color was very opaque and filled in. I continued to add the stencils to the rug, spacing them out evenly and painting a background for each. I went back in for each of them with a second coat of paint to really make sure that they were filled in. Once the backgrounds for each shape were dry, I went back in and decorated them. For the gingerbread man, I added eyes, a mouth, and little details on the arms and legs, as well as some gumdrop buttons. For one of the stars, I added lines and dots to look like a snowflake, and for the mitten, I added white dots all the way around the upper portion and green accents on the cuff. For the Christmas tree, I added a string of colorful lights, and for the last star, I added white frosting and sprinkles. Once the paint dried overnight, I finished it off with a couple coats of Flex Seal rubber spray to make it durable and waterproof. I'm absolutely obsessed with how this Christmas cookie tray outdoor rug turned out, and it might be in my top 5 favorite DIYs I've ever done.
You'll need 2 punch bowls that have some cool texture designs on the side, plus a condiment cup or some sort of round bowl. The first step is drilling holes into your punch bowls and condiment cups. You only need to drill holes in half of the pieces, and I'm using, once your holes are drilled, it's time to add some color. I took my punch bowls and condiment cups outside for a coat of spray paint. I dug into my paint stash and chose a bright green for one ornament and a muted olive green for the other. Once the paint was dry, I wanted to give these ornaments a bit more dimension and that extra holiday sparkle, so I grabbed my trusty gold Rub and Buff. I squeezed just a tiny amount of the Rub and Buff onto a dry foam brush and lightly brushed it over the raised textures on the side of the punch bowls. This gives the ornament some really beautiful depth. I used gold string, folded in half, and threaded it through the holes that I had drilled earlier. A toothpick really helped me push the string through the hole. Once the string is in, use hot glue to secure that condiment cup to the top of your punch bowl, and then knot the loose ends of the string underneath, and there you go, a perfect hanging loop for your ornament. Next up, it's time to put everything together. I applied hot glue around the entire edge of one punch bowl and then pressed the second punch bowl on the top to create a round ornament. I found some cute greenery springs that I already had in my holiday decor stash and hot glued them on the top of the ornaments for that final touch. This really brought everything together and gave these ornaments a really festive flair. These are perfect for your front porch or really anywhere you want to display them in your home. These turned out really pretty, don't you think?
Pick up a can of spray snow. I'm starting with some paper stencils. I cut these using my Cricut, but you can cut them by hand or purchase stencils. Once the stencils are up, I'm going to shake that can of snow really well and just do a couple of light coats. And then while it's still wet, I'm going to pull off the stencil. Next, I cut the letters for the words "Let It Snow," again using my Cricut. Now I'm just going to tape these up to the window. This works really well with some double-sided clear tape. I'm going to use that spray snow and spray around all of the letters. Then I'm using a tweezers to gently pull off those letters so I don't disturb any of the snow around it. And now I have this really cute winter scene on my window. And I love that when I'm done, I can just wash this all off. It's completely water soluble. I hope this inspires you to create a winter scene on your window. Start with a pool noodle, and I am going to cut one piece. It's going to be straight on one end and tapered on the other. I want this to look like a straw, so since my pool noodle is red, I'm going to wrap it in white duct tape. Now let's cut 3 small sections of that same pool noodle, and I want these to be white. So I could either paint them white, but since I have the white duct tape, I'm just going to cover them in white, and now we've got a couple little marshmallows. Now I need a big round piece, and I'm going to use foam board for this and just cut out a big circle. On here, I want to write a little message to all the delivery drivers that are dropping off packages for us. I started with pencil, and now I'm just going to fill it in with some paint markers. Using that same foam board, I'm going to cut out another shape that's going to act as a handle. And I'm going to paint this brown with a brown paint marker to match the flower pot. So let's get this assembled. On that piece of foam board where I wrote the words, I am going to attach the straw and marshmallows using some hot glue. This is going to be the top of a giant mug. The base of the mug is a big brown flower pot that I had. And I'm going to use hot glue to attach the handle to the side, turning it into a mug. Out on my front porch, I have filled this with all kinds of snacks. I can place the lid right on top, and I've got a little piece of duct tape on the edge that acts as just a handle, so it's really easy to open. This is tucked in a corner where it's safe from the weather, and now I've got snacks for those awesome delivery drivers who are bringing us packages all throughout the holiday season.
Ready to make some weatherproof and adorable Christmas porch decor? If you've never seen transparent corrugated board, you'll love what you can do with it. You'll want to grab 8 sheets of the 20 by 30 inch pieces at your local Michael's. If you don't find it there, you can order it on their site online. I started by cutting 10 inches off of the length of the board, which left me with a 20 by 20 piece. With the remaining 10-inch long piece, I scored it in the middle and folded it in half. I continued cutting the boards until I had 5 pieces that were 20 by 20, 5 that were 15 by 15, and 5 that were 10 by 10. Next, I took 4 of the 10 by 10 pieces and put them together in the shape of a square using packing tape. I then used the 5th piece as a top, creating a nice little box with no bottom to it. After that, I used red duct tape to further sturdy the box and make it look like ribbon on a Christmas present. The next step was to follow the same process in making the larger boxes. I would tape the sides together, making sure the square was sturdy, and then add the top. The difference in the larger boxes is that before adding the top, I created a hole in the center of it. You'll see why soon. I also decorated these with the red duct tape, making them look like wrapped gifts. Next, I took some duct tape and cut it into strips that were approximately 20 inches, 18 inches, or 16 inches. I folded these strips over on themselves so that the duct tape shows on both sides. Then I twisted them into a ribbon shape and taped them into place that way. After that, I took 6 of the longest twists and placed them together in sort of a star shape and stapled them together. Now it was time for the fun part, adding some lighting. Heading outside, I plugged the lights in and placed my largest box on top. Here's where the hole comes in handy, because it allowed me to pull the string of lights through the hole and into the second box, and from there up into the third box on top. Once that third box was on top, I could just place my big bow on there to finish it off. I ended up with these adorable lit up stack of Christmas presents that looked even better when it was nighttime, and the light shone through the transparent corrugated board beautifully. They looked great, and the size of the boxes were fantastic at the front door. I hope you'll create some light up presents of your own this holiday season. Thanks for watching Home Talk, and see you next time.